Oh, you can try one more time. Graveyard shift, right? Right after the break. So we have an exciting new panel coming up. And before I talk about the panel, I want to talk about the pin that I'm wearing. Anybody see that pin that I'm wearing? And it's up on the screen right now. So this is a campaign being run by United Nations. It's called a He for She campaign. So raise of hands, how many people know about this campaign? Oh, okay, good. So it's a solidarity campaign for the advancement of gender equality initiated by the United Nations. Its goal is to achieve equality by encouraging both genders to partake as agents of change and take action against negative stereotypes and behaviors. And the reason why I'm talking about this campaign is that this session is sponsored jointly by PwC and MobileIron, and PwC is one of the lead organizations who is a big proponent of He for She campaign. I am a proud PwC alumni, and I'm proud to introduce the panel today. So the first person that I would like to introduce today is the moderator for today's session. His name is Saj Nair. He's the lead of the cybersecurity practice at PwC Canada. Saj Nair. Yeah. Okay, the next one I would want to introduce is Vicky Laurens from BMO. Followed by Stephanie Copp from Munich RE. Then Mike Weber from Canadian Tire. Rhonda White from MobileIron. And LoBianco from CIBC. So over to you, Saj.
Okay, great. And so I thought of a funny way of starting the panel, but then I ran out of jokes, so I'm not going to do that. I thought I would steal someone's identity, but then I understand. I think my next moderator might do that potentially, so I'll leave it to that. So we've got a very passionate and I would say, we had a lot of intellectual discussion in lead up to the panel. We were talking about food all around the world. Then it somehow migrated into COVID discussions, and then discussions around why we're running out of toilet paper in Australia. It was quite engaging. But let's bring it back to the topic. So that said, talking about gender diversity and gender diversity particularly in cyber, curious about, what's the conversation happening at the C-suite and board level around that? So kick it off, maybe Rhonda, if you don't mind going first.
Absolutely. I'll kick this off. So I think to kind of, answer the question around what's the conversation in the C-suite and the boardroom, I think it's a good place to start with some facts. So, here in Canada, I think many of you know, your workforce is, actually already 65% diverse, right? In North America, we'll be diverse, 50% diverse in 2045. So there's a point here, which is we are a diverse workforce. Yet, we spend $8 billion a year globally today. Companies care about this diversity and equality issue. But that $8 billion in training, which is, companies are bringing in, how do you create equality in the organization? What are the programs that you derive? How do you teach people about inclusion, right? So that's being brought in for managers. That's being brought in for the C-suite. So you would think, well, how are we doing, right? If that's the case and we're spending, then why is there such a gap? And I think that for the last 5 years, technology companies have been they have report cards where they share very specifically what the gender diversity looks like, as well as broader diversity, Latino and African American communities. And I'll say the results are dismal. So even though we're spending $8 billion a year, we are not seeing any change, right? And not to pick on anyone. I hope nobody's from Google here, but I'll pick on Google for a second. Their workforce is still 70% male. And if you look at African American and the Latino communities, it's under 5%. So the workforce population is very different than what we're seeing in the technology workforce. So I think that gap exists, and I think that's what the C-suite is looking at that. They're looking at that data. Those report cards are being published, every year now. So what's happening? Where are these companies? In this conversation point. And I would say that there's three camps that I think companies are in today. I think one, there is still a small minority that is still questioning why. Why do I have to focus on this? It is a small majority, but they are. So those conversations are still, kind of why and how. I'm too small. How do I put this into action? The majority is in the second camp. That's a good thing, right? The majority is, we know why, because we create better products. We have a better culture. It's a culture, it's a great place to work for all, not just for some. So most organizations live in that zone, but they have yet to really figure out how to activate the outcomes, right? So Google's working on it. But they hire so many people, it's not making a difference. So a lot of companies are in that camp. The third camp are companies who actually get it. Why do they get it? Because they're led from the top. And two scenarios exist there. It's woman-led, or it's diverse-led, right? It's an African American. It's diversity. They understand how to build a company and how to lead a company in that, and they are not stuck in the myth of there is no pipeline. There is, which is absolutely not true. It's myth. Has anyone been to Grace Hopper? There's 25,000 female engineers running around. They're there. So I think that the third company is not living in myth. They are living in action, and they have, if you were to look at those organizations, the C-suite is completely diverse. And so when that's the case, then you can drive change into the company. And so I think in most of our companies, we're somewhere between 2 and 3. And I think the conversation that's being had, that I'm a part of, at MobileIron is, how do we get from, stage 2 to 3, so that we're really creating the outcomes not only in our products, but our customer experience and, the employment experience that we create. So,
Stephanie,
thanks.
anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would say it's very much, I like the model of the three, because it's there. But when I look at teams that I've led where I've had diversity, we have been much more successful. Our employees have been happier, demonstrably so through employee surveys and that. So anytime you can hit that balance, you're only going to do a better job. So I would say the proof is in the pudding. When you look at what a team is able to do, who you're able to attract, what kind of talent you're able to retain, not only get, that makes a big difference. And a diverse team really, in my experience, has really helped that happen.
Great. Joe, I know you're itching to chime in here. I can see it. I can sense it. Anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with what Rhonda said, that the tone has to start at the top, whether that's a female voice or a male voice. I think it's equally important for the senior leadership team to be vocal on the topic, and that includes both internally with the staff as well as externally. And so I'm fortunate enough to be part of an organization where our senior leadership team is out there in external organizations such as Catalyst and the 30% Club, which promotes gender equality on boards as well as in management teams. And they're out there talking about what we're doing, and that permeates through the staff. And then they followed up with action by looking at the data and focusing on that data. And we all care about what our bosses care about, right? And so the boss is saying, we're going to measure this and we're going to be able to manage to numbers. I think results in a cultural change in the organization over time that results in the right results.
That's great. So talking about numbers, Rhonda, you started on this. There are various stats out there. I think globally, 24%, 25%, women in cyber workforce. I think in Canada, I've heard it's about 10% or somewhere around there. So just curious, what's the reason behind the gap? And just curious to get a couple of perspectives. Vicky, if anything you want to share there?
Sure. I think one of the contributor factors is actually unconscious bias. We all have it, like it or not, and having a bias doesn't make you a bad person, because reality, going back to numbers, 90% of the thought process is unconscious, and a lot of the biases come from that process, right? And what we really need to work on is really, check those biases and challenge our processes for hiring, for interviewing, for writing the job description, so that we actually counteract those biases.
Yeah. Mike, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, despite what you say about that there is a supply, I mean, I still see shortage, personally. I mean, there's shortage across the whole of the workforce, not just the female workforce. Right. So for me, getting involved back in high school and also in, postgraduate studies. So University of Guelph, for example, this year started a master's program in cybersecurity and have been actively trying to increase the percentage of women on that course. They've set themselves very clear targets on an annual basis. Those things for me are very important because, if you're not getting enough people through, and I say that could be from whatever background, that's a challenge for us, right? But I certainly echo the, there's the, I don't know, discrimination that's conscious. Yeah. But then there's all of the subconscious discrimination that happens, right? And I think that's the other area that we really have to address. And I'm talking about simple things like, in a meeting, how much airtime do you give to people? Pay equality, of course, is something that we can look at the numbers and we can say, oh yes, well, I've done a great job here, or I've got the right percentage, but we really need to be mindful, I think, at every instance within the workplace of those unconscious biases.
Yeah. I think it's also important to realize that not every job in cybersecurity has to have a technical background. There's a lot of areas in cyber that you don't need that technical background. Right. Certainly, there are areas that you do need the technical background, because without it, it will be extremely hard to do it. But let's challenge that. We don't need everybody to be technical. In my team, we actually changed the way we do the interview and the recruiting processes to compensate for that bias on the technical background. And I think around 30% of my team doesn't have that technical background. And it was a hard sell and a risk that we took, but that's why we changed the interview process to make it more objective.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, if I can, just in the, recognizing that maybe we have to look at some of the roles a little bit differently. How do you need an engineer on every role, or can you begin to look at these differently? So I think it's two things. Can you change the definition versus just going the same way that you've thought about it, the actual description and what you're trying to hire for, and then the second part is also where you look. And I think if you just keep looking in the same place, and if we're only using LinkedIn, I think we're missing something, right? There's communities, like we're here in this community. Like I said, Grace Hopper is a community, Witty is a community. There's all kinds of women's communities around technology. And if a company isn't showing up at those, well then you're not going to show up where they are, where they think that this is a place that I want to work as a woman, where I can thrive. And I would say the same for diversity. If you're looking for African Americans, are you at the historically, black colleges and universities? Do you even, know to look there, right? Do you even, so I think it's, you have to bring some diversity into, the recruitment. You have to bring diversity into the C-suite so that you actually understand what it means, so that you can then, create a more diverse organization. So,
and that's where I think this addressing the gender imbalance is also an opportunity also for us to address the talent shortage that we've got, right? So if there are, if we're pulling most of our new recruits from technical roles, and those are probably already biased towards male applicants, then if we say, okay, well, where's the untapped talent? And that's going to come from a greater variety of backgrounds. If I look at other sort of risk domains, I don't see the same gender imbalance. So I see a lot of our risk roles, coming from, privacy or legal backgrounds, a few different backgrounds, and they don't have quite as stark an imbalance as we do in cyber. So this is an opportunity for us to, kill two birds with one stone, right? Is address the gender imbalance and get access to a whole new pool of talent that we maybe didn't think of before.
Yeah, the only one point I'll add to that on the unconscious bias is also the signals we're putting out there, right? So when we write some of these job descriptions, and this is something I learned from our sourcing team, several years back, is, making sure that we don't have, things like rockstar pen testers or, your guru AppSec person, because, those are very, male-oriented kind of signals you're throwing out there. So if you want a diversity on who applies, the moment you put those trigger words in, you may actually straight away narrow the population of individuals applying as well. Stephanie, you brought up a good point around, diverse teams are more effective, productive. They solve, problems, larger problems. Interested in getting your perspective on what are the top issues, from a cyber perspective, the industry is facing right now, where, we can use more diversity and gender diversity in particular on solving some of those complex problems.
Well, I would say I kind of build on some of the comments that have been made. So one of them is when you look at what you need on your team, you don't need 100% engineers. You need people who can talk to your clients. You need people who can translate technology.
Are you saying engineers can't speak to clients? I'm offended.
I am an engineer too.
Not quite. But you're looking at, people who can write well. A pen test, the only quality of the pen test is shown in the end report. So do you write one that's going to inspire somebody to get something done, to fix those gaps, to do those findings? So when you look at what your team needs, you'll find that, they don't all look like Python programmers suddenly. And you have a diversity. So it's not only STEM, it's really STEAM. As a former history major, which I am, I've come through a different route to get here, but it's been a really wonderful one. And the idea that this can be open to anybody with those skills. And I learned all the technical skills that came with it. I'm not an engineer, but I carried my pager and I did my time and did all of those things. And you can do that when you're taught. And those skills are the easiest to teach. Because there's just so much information about how to do that in training courses. But the tough things, like knowing how to keep a customer happy, knowing how to prioritize and shift around, those are harder skills to find, and a lot of women have those skills. So if you bring them into your team, you're going to round out what's already a strong team into a superlative team.
That's great. Joe, anything from your experience?
Well, I think, I just reiterate some of the same things. I think where we need to dig deeper in terms of, where we're looking for people. And I think the whole idea that if you kind of forget about sort of the sort of background that you're looking for and look at the attributes that you're looking for. And I think we find things like, communication skills are in very high demand, communication language skills. Technical skills will always be there. They'll always be a base, but it's really the soft skills around the technical skills that we tend to be short of. And so when I look at my challenges in terms of security in the bank, it's things like engaging our business units better and translating sort of what we're doing into language they understand. So I don't need an engineer to do that. In fact, I need an anti-engineer to do that, right? And so that's a big challenge. Another thing is I'll call it just sales and marketing. Like security people aren't necessarily great at talking in layperson language about what they're doing and being able to bring that to a different level, and having people with non-technical or variety of backgrounds helps you to kind of make that leap. So for me, those are natural places where I look at the breakdown of my organization and I say, hey, I need more diversity to help me solve my business problems. And so and I think naturally sourcing from this wider pool of talent is going to help me do that.
For sure.
Just a comment, like,
go for it.
Pinging off you, Joe, like, have we as cybersecurity professionals it's a pretty serious topic. But at the end of the day, it's, it is like an episode of NCIS, right, every week, right? Tons of investigation, right?
That's what my mom thinks I do.
You're looking for the,
that glamorous.
Somebody that's been sitting inside the network for 9 months, for the breach. It is, again, I think we've made, maybe we've over pivoted, and we haven't created this, a conversation around kind of what we do. And because it's those television shows are the most popular still, and it's what we do. It's what we do, varying degrees.
So, just curious to understand, like, what steps are you planning or already doing to champion gender diversity, especially, through the career track into the leadership roles as well? And Rhonda, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Absolutely, sure. So I think at MobileIron, I've been there for about 1.5 years, and when I got there, there was an organization that had been started called the Women of Iron, and it had been started by, I know, isn't that cool?
That's great,
I know.
I love that.
I was like, wow. And it was started by some of the product managers, and they really had purpose to what they wanted to achieve. We have about 7 committee members now, about 200 people that are active, and for me, being the sponsor with this group has really been tremendous. I think being able to, as a new executive coming in and actually working with this group, I got a view cross-functionally through this network like nobody. Like I got, brought up to speed so quickly because I could use this network to do that. And so I really wanted to have them understand, wow, the power of this. We've really given this community a budget. We've given them a voice with the C-suite. And I've been able to kind of, show them how we can take on these initiatives inside the company, creating opportunities for these women to be seen in new lights and new perspectives where they just didn't have that before. So there's about 3 or 4 best practices that we've deployed. One of them is that initiative idea, which is you're a C-suite member, you have big initiatives, 1 or 2 every year. Bring some of the Women of Iron on that initiative, and I can tell you the C-suite's catching on. There's a new initiative that's just kicking off, in the next week. So that one's a big one. The second one is, you're hiring at a certain level, kind of director and above. One of your candidates should be diverse. We need the commitment from the executive team that they're going to, deliver against that, and we have that commitment. Those are probably a couple of the big ones, but I can't explain enough. I think the first year of this Women of Iron, I think it was women talking to women. And then, as we moved into, year 2 and year 3, it really became about, no, this is, how women, can create the initiatives and can support the initiatives of the organization, and it's just an opportunity to be seen by the rest of the company in a new light. So I encourage it. Just even in any department, being able to give somebody an opportunity for learning, put them in a new environment from a cross-functional standpoint, and it gives you a new perspective, and it gives them a new perspective, and it's probably one of the easiest things that we can do.
Yeah. Mike, I can see the
Yeah.
sparkle in your eyes.
Yeah.
You want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, at Canadian Tire, we're very lucky. The chair of the board is a woman, the chair of the audit committee is a woman. So we do have strong female leadership, right? And I think those role models are very, very important, right? And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe later. But having those role models, having the sponsorship at the highest level within the company is very important. We have a Women in Leadership program. It's not just a cybersecurity program, it's across the whole of the company. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's very important from a leadership perspective because, we might talk about, well, becoming the CISO is one interesting, outcome, but actually having the diversity of the knowledge, the breadth of the experience across many areas of the business happen to be very useful as a CISO, but they also happen to be very useful in a lot of other leadership roles as well. And so not confining that program to just the cybersecurity place, I think is very helpful. We have a lot of women who've come through from the business, and I have one of my senior leaders who's actually come through in that program. Been very, very effective for us.
Joe, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I like the idea of using role models. I also think it's important for us to try to find and encourage those role models at different levels within our organizations. And we've been doing a lot of work, outreach work to as part of our talent acquisition strategy to get out there and be active in different events. And part of that is ensuring we have female representation in a lot of those industry events as well. And so having people out there when they see, hey, they're not just talking about it. We have women in cybersecurity roles, and they can set an example for me. You're going to be more likely to attract women into your organization, right? So, sending a team of male people out to an event and saying, yeah, we want to hire women is probably not going to result in what you're looking for. So for us, it's also making sure that we have that throughout, up and down our organization, and we started to see the effects of that. Another thing we do is make sure you measure sort of what your results are, right? So for us, not just looking at total diversity counts and targets, but what levels, how we're doing at different levels. Obviously, we don't want to see those numbers go down at leadership roles, but that starts with having a good, strong pipeline, and then looking at the different types of roles as well, and making sure that we're balanced. What we've found is often there's an imbalance where certain types of roles tend to have a higher proportion, and then we have some pockets where we have more of an imbalance, and we try to correct those as well over time. So all those things are sort of important strategies.
Great. All right, last one from me, and I'm going to ask everyone this one. Drum rolls. So I'll go start with Vicky, and then I'll finish off on Joe. So when do you think, it's a two-part question, when do you think we'll hit gender parity in cyber workforce in Canada? And the second part is, what is one thing you would ask each one of us here to do?
I don't think that we necessarily need gender parity. That's my personal opinion. I think we need gender equality, which is different. And if I look at the stats, I think I read a study that said that gender parity will be like in 200 years from now. So that doesn't sound too promising. What I will ask the audience to do is really going back to the unconscious bias, is really challenge yourself. I read 99% of people think that they're less biased than their peers. And we really think it's somebody else's problem and not ours. I think we also need to understand that this is not we versus them. This is an us problem. It's really society. It's no men's, women, or gender-generated issue. I think diversity is the first step where we need to have the inclusion part of it. Because having a seat at the table doesn't mean having a voice. And inclusion gives you that voice.
Yeah, that's great. Stephanie?
Probably a number of years from now. I guess that's my really hedging way. I very much like the way you put it, Vicky, in terms of thinking about it in terms of equity, not parity. But I think what I would really want to spend time on is what I think you should be doing to do that. So one of them is really start thinking differently about who you hire. The greatest success I've had in my career of finding folks who were really technical, believe it or not, were EAs, who ended up becoming rock-solid pen testers because all the soft skills that you kill yourself trying to pull into your team, they had in spades. They had a desire and an appetite to learn. We had senior people who were anxious to mentor and be able to put that on their resume. It just together pulled together. So look at different places for staff. And I guess the other piece that would go with that is follow through. So when somebody says they're interested in the field, follow through. Talk to them about it. Entice people in it. This is an amazing field. I get really excited about it. I love what I do. And if I can get more people to join me for the ride and finally solve the problem of not being able to fill open positions in anything under 6 months, which I'm sure most of us can feel, wouldn't it be greater to have a bigger pool to be dipping into? So look wider, look broader.
Great. Mike?
Okay, so I'll stick my neck out, and I'm going to say 20 years. And
20
why do
years?
20 years.
Okay.
So why do I say 20 years? Well, if you think the average career, the average working life is about 40 years, I think we have to see enough change coming through the system that people like me have retired, hopefully, and we have to move that demographic through in order to get to a parity. So, I'm going to say 20 years. But the other aspect of it is, as I've said, I strongly believe that getting more women interested from an early age is very important. So if I was to ask, I'm going to ask for two things from you as an audience. One is try and find time to go and spend time in schools and talk to people about what cybersecurity is. It's a really interesting profession. And the great head start is a lot of them will have read stories, they understand, at a high level the technology. So, find time to get into the schools, get people interested. The other thing I think is so important is mentorship. And this is not a gender-specific thing. This is true for everybody. I owe an enormous amount to my career, to the people who mentored me, and I would urge you all to get involved in being mentors for others, because it's really the ability to change somebody else's life. So go to schools, do mentorship.
Great.
Nice.
Rhonda?
All right. I think I'm hard-pressed to make a prediction. I've been in technology for 30 years, and I've definitely seen progress. So I think probably what I'm looking for is progress, and that we can continue to see that. And I think in order for us to achieve that, I do think we have to recognize that this means a change in mindset, which is very hard to do. So, what you're talking about, and I think in order to change that mindset, it needs to start with you. You're making hires, and I think that think about that. What can you do differently? Don't run the same pattern that you've been running. What's a different pattern that you can run? We've talked about a number of different ideas that can change that pattern so that you can change the look of your team. And I think the mentorship program, that is actually one of the best practices. I think it's been talked about here today. I know we run that program, and I think that the community of women, I'm in a number of groups, but I am in a C-suite female group, Executive Women's Forum, and we talk about sponsorship. So when you hit that level where you're actually trying to break into that C-suite and into the board, you need sponsorship. It goes beyond mentorship. And that is, if I'm really honest, anyone that's ever given me a chance was a white, happened to be a white male. So they've been my sponsor. So again, one of my big conversations with the women's group is, again, you can't just talk about this amongst yourself. You have to bring in this conversation. You've got to get over the awkward phase and get through to where, we're just, seeing each other for what we do. And that sponsorship is absolutely critical. You need a sponsor, which is, that next phase of mentorship. So,
Joe, to finish it off?
So it's always tough to go
Yeah.
last.
All of the above?
Yeah.
It's an option.
I guess first off, in terms of timeframes, like I would say I think we can do better than 20 years. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think the goal, we're really trying to get to sort of at least mirroring what the workforce looks like, right? So we want to be sort of no worse than the workforce in terms of equity and balance. And so I can see a view, maybe that's 10 or 15 years, but hopefully less than 20. If we're continuing to do the things we do, what I do see is there's going to be an acceleration, because if you have more role models, if you have more active recruitment, I think that there'll be a point where you see that start to improve more drastically. So I'm hopeful that we can do it in the sort of no more than 15-year time frame. So I'm not sure if that's going out.
We
on
like
much
your
of a limb.
predictions.
Yeah.
Let's hope you're right.
I guess if I look at my history, like I'd say, in 20 years, the last 20 years that I've been in the workforce, I see things have changed a lot in terms of other forms of diversity as well. I mean, our workforce today looks very different. At least if you work in Toronto, I think you could see there's a much different workforce composition than we had 20 years ago. So I think we can do better in terms of the rate of change here. And I guess in terms of what to leave with people, I was going to say mentorship, and then Mike said it, and then I said no, I got a better idea. I'm going to talk about sponsorship. We talk about both those. That one's off the list too. But those are really important. Both of them are very important. So I think mentorship is more active and hands-on in terms of coaching and such. But what I often find is that sponsorship is sometimes lacking. Who's going to go to bat for that person when we're having those talent conversations? Who's going to be the person in the room that's going to go to bat for people? So making sure that all your your top talent has that sponsorship is very important. And I'll go back to something I said earlier, that I think it's really important for those voices to be out there outside your organization. I think really that's a game changer, whether it's a leader or somebody like me who's getting out there, or if it's some of your great examples that you have in your workforce. So get your female talent out there, kind of going and finding more people like them and talking to people and inspiring the next generation. I think that's very important. I have 2 daughters at home, and they don't believe that my field is something that young girls would be interested in. But when I talk to them about what I do and I explain, it's like a lot of the TV shows out there, they don't really believe me. Yeah. But then I could start to see it, and I think if they saw the people who are actually doing the job that look like them, I think they would absolutely believe it. So I encourage you to kind of get that message out there to people outside our organizations.
Wow, that was a great close, and well, thank you everyone for making the time for this. And Vicky, what you said, I think that's really resonated with me. It's not just about parity; it's equality. I think, and it gets me thinking: are we looking at this the right way? I mean, we talk about 24%, of the workforce is women, and that's not to say we don't need more women, but are they, even the 24% we have, are they being treated equally? That's a different dimension. And we need to look at different metric to start dissecting through how those women already in the workforce feeling about it. So that's pretty powerful. We actually had another panelist who couldn't make it, Melissa from RBC. So I kind of proxied in and asked, hey, is there anything you want to say to the crowd? Well, we've got everyone here. So she had 2 things, and I'll close it off. One is she strongly encouraged that, don't wait for someone else to make the change happen, be the change. Yeah. Like each of us has the power to go and do something about this. So if you feel passionate about this, don't wait for someone to fix the problem. Take it upon yourself, do it. And Melissa is leading the Women in Identity chapter in Canada. So if any of you are interested, she's offered that. Please do reach out to her on LinkedIn on that. The second thing she said is support each other. If you look at our careers, we've all had someone who supported us along the way, women or men. And when I look back on my own career, frankly, the biggest people, the most influential people who supported me were all women. And I don't know if that's an accident, or if I'm just fortunate, but it's that's resonated with me quite a bit. So, be that change, be that sponsor to someone, and then encourage them to give back as well. And that's how maybe we'll get to 10 years, 20 years, hopefully, and not 200 years, is my hope. I'm optimistic about that. So with that, thank you very much. Round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.